Hi, I'm Rick Thigpen. At Public Service, we believe all citizens need to be informed about the important economic and environmental issues that affect their communities. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the CAUCUS Educational Corporation.
Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Northward Center, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, founded by the Jewish community, PSE&G, committed to providing safe, reliable energy now and in the future, TD Bank, MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey, Berkeley College. Education prepares us to reach our dreams. Be inspired. And by the FIDELCO Group. Promotional support provided by NJ.com, Small News, Big News, True Jersey. And AM 970, The Answer.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No. People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
I'm Steve Adubato. This is One-on-One coming to you from the Agnes Varus NJTV studio. It is our pleasure to introduce Jens Audenaert, who is Division Vice President and General Manager of Work Market ADP, which is?
ADP is the leading human capital management provider in the US and abroad, and Work Market was a recent acquisition that allows companies to manage their freelance and independent contractor populations.
And ADP is a big supporter of our programming in the area of diversity and inclusion. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely.
So here's the thing. There's an initiative at ADP. It's called ADP Pride. What is it, and what does that have to do with diversity and inclusion?
Sure. So I have the pleasure and honor to be the executive sponsor for ADP Pride. It is one of our 9 business resource groups that really sits within the Office of Diversity and Inclusion.
You're the executive sponsor.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Which means I lead the group. And so diversity and inclusion is a key priority for ADP. We think it's important for organizations to have a focus on having a welcoming culture for all. We think it's very important to win in the talent marketplace. And as a provider of HR services to our clients, we also believe that it is our role and duty to educate our clients on the importance of diversity and inclusion. And then for specifically ADP Pride, LGBTQ diversity and inclusion. So for our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer and questioning associates and communities.
You know, we're taping this program. We always disclose when we tape. You see in the corner of the screen on the 17th of September 2019. It'll be seen after that. But in fact, on the 11th of October is National Coming Out Day. Not only for that day, but for the entire month, ADP Pride does what?
So we have a major campaign coming out in October. We actually have 3 campaigns throughout the year. There's a big one in June for Pride Month. October is a little bit more solemn. It's about National Coming Out Day and Spirit Day, where we will reach our 57,000 associates globally with a message around those specific days. National Coming Out Day is really about celebrating the visibility of the LGBTQ community. This kind of goes back to Harvey Milk, come out wherever you are.
For those who don't know Harvey Milk, Google Harvey Milk, an iconic, important leader coming out of San Francisco, tragically killed by another member of that city council. Documentary on PBS. Check it out, it's important. Pick it up from there.
Yeah. So it's kind of the most foundational level of LGBTQ activism, if you will, is just being visible, right? That was kind of the ground floor for the modern...
And Harvey Milk was one of the first to do that, excuse me, way before anyone else was doing it.
Very courageous. So it's the ground level, and it's the foundation of the modern gay civil rights movement, if you will. And it's a very courageous step that LGBTQ people, even in today's day and age, and especially in some areas in the world, still have to undertake, right? And we really have to come out every day. But it's a great form of leadership as an LGBTQ person, and it's a great form of making yourself visible and kind of support those that maybe don't have it as easy to be out. So I think that's a very important day to just remember the importance of being visible as a community. And then Spirit Day, which is also in October 17th this year, is all around anti-bullying and really got started in the wake of a number of high school suicides because kids were being bullied for being different, for being LGBTQ goes beyond LGBTQ, but it's really against bullying in the workplace, at school, in society.
Are we doing a good enough job, or doing enough to protect folks in that community, in the LGBTQ community?
We've made a ton of strides as a society, definitely here in the US. There are still inequities based on the geographies in the US, and then internationally it's a different story, country by country. There's definitely still countries and regimes that are very repressive for their LGBTQ
And some
communities.
more opening and accepting and embracing.
Absolutely. So some of them are really getting there. I think the role that corporations can play by really making it very accepted for everyone.
Well, let's go into this further. Beyond public policy, beyond laws. What I'm curious about is you've differentiated between inclusion and diversity. And for a lot of folks, man, it's all the same thing. You don't see it that way.
I don't see it that way. I think they're both very important and they kind of go hand in hand. Diversity is really the what. It's kind of what you can measure. Do we actually have diverse talent coming into the door, and can we track that? I think inclusion is much more nebulous. It's the how. How do we actually make sure that sustainably we can be a diverse workplace where differences in perspectives are being celebrated and differences in backgrounds? And so that's much more cultural, and it comes from the top. Comes from a leadership position where a company states as its value, we embrace everyone. We want everyone bring their full, authentic self to the workplace, and we actually appreciate those differences in perspective. It's a value, it's a cultural value, which is much harder to attain than just the metrics of diversity, but they do go hand in hand.
Sure. You know, there are some people, I'm sure, watching right now, and I've heard some people say this, why do people need to self-identify in the workplace? What's the difference? Nobody asks anybody else, but it's a lot more complicated than that. And it's easy for someone who is straight, if you will, to say something like that, as opposed to someone who's been dealing with a whole range of issues impacting his or her life.
Yeah, I think there's really two levels of self-identification. It's about when you show up and you have conversations.
Or, excuse me, their life as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be more inclusive. Go ahead,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's a great pronoun. It's about when you show up and you have conversations with people, it's just being able to be yourself, right? A lot of people focus on their time management, but it's also about energy management. And it takes a lot of energy for people to pretend to be someone they're not when they're in the workplace. So I think that's one important thing, why we should allow everyone to be who they are and identify as such in the workplace.
They're more productive as well.
Absolutely. And they thrive and they become more successful if they can be their full selves. I think at a kind of macro level, an aggregate level, it's also about a community. And people say it's kind of this truism, but you don't count unless you're counted.
You don't count
unless you're counted. And so a lot of companies track a wide range of statistics around their minorities. What's very interesting specifically around the LGBTQ community is that there's actually not that many companies that allow their employees to self-identify. And a lot of that is because there is no federal protection for LGBTQ employees.
So the U.S. compared to the rest of the world, there are no legal protections.
That's correct. So the Civil
From
Rights
workplace.
Act, the Civil Rights Act does not include protection for LGBTQ employees.
Is that the Civil Rights Act of 1964?
Correct, yes. So in almost 30 states, you can be legally fired for being LGBTQ. You can also get evicted. So there's, even beyond the workplace, there is protections that are lacking. And so it's a very sensitive thing to actually track someone's LGBTQ status if they can legally get fired. Now, a lot of companies have their own non-discrimination policies that prevail the local laws. At a company like ADP, you cannot get fired based on your gender identity.
But it's company by
or
company.
Sexual orientation. But it's company by company. And so...
Not by statute.
Not by statute. And so as I mentioned before, we, as an HR company, we feel it's our duty to educate the market there. And so we actually now have products that our clients can use that allow them to track LGBTQ self-identification.
Jens, we appreciate what you are doing, what your colleagues are doing, diversity, inclusion in the workplace, protecting people, making people feel very comfortable being who they are, fully who they are. Yep. Very well said. Thank you, Jens.
Thank you very much, Steve.
I'm Steve Adubato. We'll be right back right after this.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Welcome to an ongoing series that we're doing called Autism, A Different Way of Thinking. We are honored and pleased to be joined by Cornelia Gilpin, who is a nurse manager at Overlook Medical Center. That's part of the Atlantic Health System. Good to see you.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let me fully disclose out of the box that Atlantic is one of our very generous underwriters in public broadcasting, particularly to our production company. Let me ask you, this series on autism, we keep saying a different way of thinking. How do you think about it and deal with it every day?
So I think this, the program that we have at Overlook Medical Center, working with Project Search, provides
Go back, Project Search, let's clarify that. What is that?
So Project Search is an organization that's actually national. They're in 48 states in 7 countries. And what they do is facilitate a transition for students who are almost done high school or between 18 to 21 who have disabilities, and it helps them to develop job skills so that they can transition to the work environment and the workforce.
Break down some of those job skills for us, if you could.
Certainly. So some of the things that they can learn depending on the student, and it really is customized and tailored to the student, are repeatable tasks. So say, for example, we have the variety of programs that we have the students work with are in human resources, and so they can be responsible for filing, clerical work, environmental services, where they work with our staff to collect garbage, dispose of waste. We have them working in our library, in our environmental services department. They've also worked in our foundation.
So let me stop you right there. Folks you're talking about can do a lot. Mm-hmm. A lot.
Yes.
To what degree is there a misperception of people with autism that you're talking about in terms of what they're capable of, on the part of many?
Mm-hmm. And I think this is where I am so pleased about the program that Project Search is and when it was developed and what it's all about, because there is a lot of misinformation about the capabilities of individuals with disabilities.
Such as?
So it's like, well, what can they do? How do I interact with them? What if they're not able to speak, or what can they really do? And so I think it's not even so much intentional, but more of a lack of knowledge. They don't really know what someone can do. And I think where this project, where this program is helpful is that it allows employers to realize what these individuals with disabilities can do.
Sorry for interrupting. How do you actually engage, have conversations with prospective employers of people dealing with autism?
So one of the things that we do at Overlook Medical Center with Project Search is we have like a job fair. We call it speed dating for the students, where they actually get the opportunity to meet with other organizations that come in who are potential employers. So closer towards the end of the program, they've been provided the opportunity, they've been taught with the instructor in class, and they've had some real life experience in interning in different departments. They are now able to present themselves to an employer.
How do you coach them? I mean, I spend a lot of my time coaching people in another life and their communication skills. I'm curious, is it different to coach, to train, to help a 16-year-old, a 21-year-old, 22-year-old to prepare for communicating in such a pressure-filled job interview?
Absolutely.
Is it different?
I think it is. I think the difference is, depending on the individual, the time that you spend with them, you get to understand what their strengths are, what comes naturally for them, if they're hesitant or shy, how to become more confident, how to be able to articulate clearly what their strengths are. And so when they're going through the various internships, you really are providing feedback. Both the department that's working with them and their instructor provides feedback to them to say, you did a really good job with this. This is really great. Here's how you could do this a little bit differently. So that's how they're coached. So by the time they get to that job fair speed dating, they're a little bit more comfortable, they're more confident, they can share what their strengths are, what they have done. They can give examples of the things that they've actually done in the various internships.
How rewarding is this for you? You're a nurse manager.
Yes.
You got into, it's not a business because you're not making a ton of money.
Absolutely.
But it is an industry. And most of the nurses, we work with the Nurses Association and others in your profession. I'm always struck by the degree of empathy, compassion, the desire to actually make a personal difference with people. How much of this is personal for you?
I got into this because I enjoy working with people, and I feel that everybody deserves an opportunity to show what they can do. And one of my departments was one of the areas that we had students come in, and we met with the instructors, and we talked about what we envisioned them to accomplish. And so in various levels, for me, seeing the students start the program, when they come in, they come with their parents, a little bit hesitant about what this is really going to be about, and then seeing them at the end when they're graduating, when they're fully integrated into the program, and also seeing them after they've completed the program.
How rewarding?
Extremely rewarding.
How rewarding for them and their families?
I think extremely rewarding for them as well. We actually have one example of a student who was hired at Overlook. We actually had 4...
at your place, at Overlook?
At our organization. In one situation, he did so well. The nurses were so appreciative of what he had done and how it relieved them of taking care of some other responsibilities so they could spend more time with their patients, that the organization actually created a job description for a job position for this student that we didn't have before.
What does it do for the families?
I think it helps them to feel like their child will also be a valuable member of society, contributing to society, and not necessarily, it provides them more independence. So the families feel like my child is not going to feel different. And that sometimes is where it's challenging for them. It's like, what will my child be able to do? And how will they be able to gain independence? And I think this program provides that.
Those are daunting questions before I let you go. You are, in fact, joining us for a roundtable panel with 10 experts, including, again, I've said this in previous interviews with the Commissioner of Health, Dr. Audenaert will be joining us. It's a top priority for the Department of Health in the state. It's a national problem. It's maybe even more of an issue in New Jersey because of the numbers, but I'm going to ask you this. What's the most significant message you want to get across in the panel discussion? What is it?
I think one thing I would like I think it's twofold. So for parents, there are opportunities for your child to grow and expand and be confident, productive member of the workforce. For employers, I would say don't open up your mind to the possibilities. It's not just necessarily what can we do for them, but what can they do for us.
Be open-minded.
Be open-minded, absolutely.
Consider the possibilities. Maybe that is something it's interesting. Again, I repeat, autism, a different way of thinking. That's a different way of thinking. And I want to thank you, not just for thinking that way, but more importantly, doing it every day with your colleagues. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Steve Adubato here at the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey. We're doing a forum in just a few minutes. I'm breaking the cycle of abuse, of bullying, particularly dealing with teens, and we're joined by one of the folks who will be joining us, Lauren Hersh, National Director of World Without Exploitation and Teen Online Safety Expert. Describe your organization, World Without Exploitation.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
We are a national coalition designed to combat human trafficking and sexual exploitation. We work on a lot of different fronts: policy, changing legislation, and getting into the community and really changing hearts and minds on these issues.
I'm curious about this. Connect the work that you're doing, the victims that you deal with every day, and bullying and abuse.
They are your quintessential victims of bullying and abuse. We see that where there's vulnerability, that people tend to be victimized in exploitation, in online dating violence, and they're really the people we want to make sure that we're having clear and raw conversations with and preventing this where we can.
Online, you refer to online dating violence. Describe it for folks. What does it look like?
Well, we're seeing more and more as things shift from the streets to online. We are seeing all of the sort of the quintessential things that we see in dating violence: power, control, issues of isolation, jealousy, verbal abuse. It's really translating online, and it's happening in lots of different ways. It's happening, we see significant others who are using online platforms to hack and track their victims.
To hack and track victims.
Yeah. as a mechanism to control. So you have a person who is looking to control their significant other, and they're getting passwords, and they're going online, and they're looking at where that person is at all times to really exert tremendous control. We're seeing a lot of humiliation happening online, so that significant other may go online and may pose as their partner and may reveal private information that's really designed to humiliate and embarrass.
But let me ask you this. I'm curious, for parents who obviously watching right now, worried, concerned, want to be helpful, want to be part of the effort to protect their own children first, others later, given the fact that so much online activity takes place without a parent, regardless of how much he or she is committed to parenting, good parenting, so much of that online activity takes place without the parent's awareness. Your advice?
I think it's really important to crack open real and raw conversations with young people.
How difficult are these conversations? What do they sound like?
I think it's as simple as understanding where your kids are and what they're doing and trying to be a part of their lives and doing it in a way where we're not just probing, but we're really opening ourselves up to listen to what young people have to say in the most non-judgmental way possible.
Let me push back a little bit. Very often you get from teens, why are you crying so much? Everything's fine. Leave me alone. If I had a problem, I'd tell you. We can't accept that.
I actually think that it kind of depends on the way we're framing the conversations with young people. So I think a great way in is not to pry about that person in particular, but like, where are your friends? What are they doing? Do you feel like your friends are in healthy relationships? What do those healthy relationships look like? And in the event that your friend is in an unhealthy relationship, what are things that you can do? And I think that opening those conversations in a way that's not necessarily about that kid, but about her friends and empowering that young person. Or his, absolutely. I say her, but absolutely, we're talking about really the spectrum on gender.
And by the way, the part of our conversation about breaking the cycle of abuse and bullying deals with the transgender community. We'll deal with that in the forum as well, but I'm curious about this. Why did you get so committed and involved? Why are you so committed and involved to this movement, this cause?
I mean, for a whole host of reasons. I think that if we are going to make a drastic difference in our society and we need change, the best place to start is by having these sorts of conversations with young people. I think when we do, young people want to have these honest conversations. They want to have the tough conversations.
They want to have them.
I think they do. I think it depends on how you frame those conversations, but I think that if you go in and you do a lot of listening, I think young people are hungry to talk.
I'm curious about this. I don't know whether this helped, hurt. I don't know what the impact is, but I often ask myself as a member of the media, what role we have to play in this. And I wound up watching a series that I know you're familiar with, the Dirty John series. And I'm not going to advocate you should see it or you shouldn't see it. But I thought to myself, this guy, right? And people, you Google him, you find out who he is. I'm not going to promote the story anymore. He did many of the same things that you're describing to a woman who was in her early 50s. Is it different for a 15-year-old being bullied, being abused, being treated in a certain way in an online dating situation versus a middle-aged woman?
I mean, I think it's
you know the series I'm talking about.
I think it's a really good question. I think it's a really important question.
Couldn't tell whether it helped or not.
Well, so you're asking a couple of different questions, right? So what I'm hearing you ask is, what's the media role here?
Yeah, what is our role? Is it to do a docudrama and say, there it is, watch this, that's the problem?
I mean, I think that the media is so essential in telling these stories. As long as the media is telling these stories in an honest, objective way, where we're really listening to the voices of survivors and of other people who are impacted by these issues.
And there's no need to sensationalize, is there?
I don't think there is.
It's powerful enough.
I think that sensationalizing it actually can be really harmful. You asked another question that I actually do want to answer, which is about a 50-year-old versus a 15-year-old. I don't think we should just be talking about young people and violence. I think it can be actually really detrimental, because I think that we're all, especially in this moment in time where online access is everywhere and online issues are really pervasive, I think we're seeing damage being done to not just young people, but adults as well. Now, the difference here is that when you're dealing with a young person, there's often a tremendous amount of trust.
Right.
And there's also a tremendous amount of vulnerability. So I think that while it's really important to have these conversations about everybody, I do think that there's really significant value in getting in and having these conversations with young people.
Lauren, you're making a difference every day, and I thank you for joining us, not just in this interview, but for the forum we're having here at the Healthcare Foundation on breaking the cycle of abuse and bullying. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the CAUCUS Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the Northward Center, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, PSE&G, TD Bank, MD Advantage Insurance Company of New Jersey, Berkeley College, and by the FIDELCO Group. Promotional support provided by NJ.com and AM 970 The Answer. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
PSE&G is building New Jersey's clean energy future. We're working to protect our network against extreme weather, expanding and upgrading transmission lines, and modernizing our natural gas system by installing new, more durable underground pipes. At PSE&G, our goal is to make sure you have the safe, reliable energy you need to power your life now and into the future.